Good morning, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, and welcome to this week's weekly energy boost. My name is Elisheva, and today I'm here with Eitan, and we are breaking down the Kabbalistic understanding of spiritual cleansing. Cleansing and purification are words that we toss around in different episodes. If you've been studying Kabbalah, you may have heard the terms, but we've never really dedicated an episode to breaking down not only the wisdom behind what we mean when we talk about cleansing, but what is the work of cleansing? What does it mean to purify ourselves? It sounds like that we're impure, and Kabbalistically speaking, that's not the issue. And I believe that for a lot of us, there are misconceptions about what purity means. And we want to break those misconceptions down and understand how it's very possible that we have been giving up opportunities to cleanse ourselves because we didn't recognize or understand how powerful those moments can be. Weekly Energy Boost is a 7-day spiritual weather forecast where we provide our listeners with the most powerful and practical tools to navigate the coming 7 days through the wisdom and tools of Kabbalah. And every week we share the pathway, what the opportunity is of this week and what the potential pitfalls are, so that every episode ends up offering wisdom and tools not only that are powerful for this week, but for any week of the year. And because of this unique moment in time, it's the month of Cancer, and this week's portion also gives us really powerful insights into a lot of the unseen forces that limit and block us, and how we inadvertently cling to those forces without realizing it. And then we wonder why things aren't moving, we're not progressing, or we're experiencing a kind of Groundhog Day, the same day over and over and over again, even though our desire is to have a breakthrough. So Eitan, how do we start?
So I think the first question, when we are talking about cleansing or purifying, what are we cleansing? What are we trying to clean? When you clean your house, when you cleanse your house from bacteria or from dust or from dirt, but what are we supposed to cleanse? Because part of our journey, our spiritual journey, is cleansing. But what are we cleansing? So we need to acknowledge that in this physical world, there are two forces. There's the light force, which is infinite force of good that exists within us, around us, all the time. So how come we don't see light? How come we don't feel what light is? Love, joy. How come we don't? Because feeling the light, seeing the light, experiencing the light will mean I will feel inspired all day long. I will feel happy and excited all day long. I will be vast and unlimited all day long. I will have natural tendency to love, to care, to share all day long. My heart will be open to see, to feel, to accept all day long. So why I don't experience? Because there's a forces of negativity, and the one word that describes that force is the force of death, which is force that's blocking us from feeling and experiencing the light. What does it mean? How does it work? Since the sin of Adam, which is the origin of humanity, Kabbalistically, every time we acting selfishly, what we call in Kabbalah desire for oneself alone, desire for temporary relief, desire that driven by the need to fix myself and ignore the rest. I'm acting opposite of the light of the Creator within me. I'm acting opposite of the soul. I'm actually disconnecting from the light. When I'm disconnected from the light, it's not just a neutral state. I'm become vulnerable for negative forces, spirits, which are all extensions of the forces of death. That means the opposite of life, the opposite of continuity, the opposite of light, the opposite of transparent, open. And it's a literal metaphysical force that blind me to see the great in me, that causing me to be fearful. Kabbalistically, fears, reactive behavior, negative thoughts is a result of negative forces. It's literally force of death, force of limitations, force of blockage that don't let me think clearly. We all know that you have certain challenges one day and you wake up with a bad mood, you're scared, you're afraid. The next day you have the same challenges, but you look at them differently completely. What have changed? Nothing have changed with the challenge. Somehow this dark cloud, which is manifestations of negativity that we're here to cleanse, blind you. So anytime I see small, I feel small, I'm controlled by sadness, by selfishness, by lust, by judgment, by jealousy, by fear. It's not logical. It's a force of limitations. It's a force of death, of disconnect that blinding me. So imagine our soul is beautiful, filled with light, but around our soul, we have layers of dark energy. It's energy that manifests itself in fears, phobias, negativities, anger, rage, negative feelings, literally negative metaphysical energy that manifests itself physically. So when we say, I would like to cleanse, I would like to get rid of. How do I get rid of or purify or rid myself from being influenced? How do I get rid of these layers of darkness and allow myself to shine, because the light is already in me? It doesn't shine because, imagine, it's like dark filters that blocking my light from shining.
One of the teachings for me that really helped me understand the power of my intention and my actions to do this, what we're talking about, to do this spiritual cleansing, is that the word for sin, for transgression, if you go to that religious space in your head, in Hebrew it's avera, which means, it comes from the word la'avir, which means to transfer. And the Kabbalists explain that every time we transgress whatever that action is, it's essentially taking light, taking positive energy that could potentially nourish my soul and strengthen me in a positive way. I transfer it to those negative forces, to those limitations, again, to the anger, to the fears, to the anxiety, to all those negative experiences. When I don't recognize the opportunity and I get reactive or judgmental or critical or angry or all those things, I'm actually strengthening the power of those forces around my soul. So the realization, and of course I'm a very visual person, so it's almost like I imagine these two banks or these two storehouses for me personally. And I have a choice. If I'm going to get angry and I'm going to kick and scream and shout and lash out about something, I'm taking energy that could potentially reveal goodness and blessings in my life, and I'm putting it in the bank of my ego, the bank of my desire to receive for the self alone. So how pure, quote unquote, I am is really a question of how aligned I am with the light of my soul versus how aligned I am with my desire to receive for the self alone. And every move I make, every thought, every word, every action has the power to do either one, to move me either way, to strengthen either part of me. Now, you can look at that and say, well, that's really scary. But you can also look at it and say, no, that is ridiculously empowering. I have the ability, and I think that's one of the reasons that the Kabbalists teach that if you wake up in a bad mood in the morning and you manage to transform it, you manage to put it aside and inject positivity and raise your vibration, it can be one of the most powerful days of your life, because waking up in a bad mood is basically 18-hour feeding of the desire to receive for the self, feeding those forces of death, feeding those forces of darkness. And if you can switch it, you put a waterfall of light into the bank of your soul. So the fact that I have that power, it's not my upbringing, it's not the economy, it's not the government, it's not my boss. The power is in my hands to decide which part of me is strengthened by my next word, my next conversation with myself, my next action. I get to decide which bank I feed. And the moment I really embraced that, I realized that the more I feed my soul and I choose the thoughts, words, and actions that nourish the positive me, the real me, my true essence, the less power the darkness has. So it works both ways. Choosing to nourish me strengthens that, the true me, the soul, but it also begins to diminish or erode at those negative layers that prevent me from being and living truly in my essence.
Beautiful. So based on what you're saying, I think step number one to begin the process of cleansing, because every day we would love to do two things. Number one, to channel the energy of my soul, the desire of my soul, the light of the Creator, the force of life. Number two, to cleanse what is not, to cleanse the forces of death, to cleanse the forces of negativity. So in order to go through this process called cleansing, I first need to know that there's two aspects of me, the real me and the illusionary me. So every time I don't feel that energy of light, that energy of inspiration, that energy of care, that energy of continuity, that it means I'm seeing and experiencing life through the illusionary me. I am controlled by these negative forces, shells, blockages, forces of death. Because what's dangerous is that I believe that my perception shows me the true reality. It's so essential to know there's the illusionary me and there's the real me. And the illusionary needs false identity. My true me is pure, even though I feel limited, I feel blocked, I feel sadness. So that's where cleansing starts, when you don't take seriously the blocked you. It's not the real you. And then, so how do you cleanse it? How do you cleanse it? So it's interesting. There's a concept, in order to remove the force of death, you need to be willing to face death. What does it mean practically? Pain is mini death. Think about all the fears that we have. We're afraid to experience major death, medium death, or mini death. I'm afraid to be rejected. I'm afraid to be judged. I'm afraid to fail. I'm afraid I'll be out of control and things will not happen according to my plan. I'm afraid that in my perception, if something will happen or will not, it will feel so painful, which resembling the opposite of the light, which is type of death. How do I fix it? How do I cleanse that force of death? By running away? No. The last thing that I want is to feel rejected. The last thing that I want is things will not happen my way. The last thing that I want is the stomachache that I feel right now, or the headache that I feel right now, or the emotional pain that I feel right now will stay forever. The Kabbalists say, you want to purify that? You want to connect with the true reality and cleanse the illusion of death? Are you willing to feel it? The reason you don't will to feel it because you believe it's real, the force of death. Are you willing to face it? So actually, it's very simple. The Rothberg said, every time when you feel emotional or physical discomfort or pain, of course, in a big picture, you don't want to stay there. But let's say you cannot do anything proactively to change the reality right now. Every time you're willing to say, I'm willing to feel it because I know it's an illusion. And by being willing to feel it, I know that beneath all this experience, this pure light of the Creator, what are you actually? You are cleansing yourself from this negative energy or the illusionary me or the limited me. Every time I'm feeding that force, it's pain. I can't stand it. What is pain? The illusion of death, the opposite of the light force of the Creator. Running away from the pain, I'm feeding the illusion of pain, the illusion of death in a greater way. Embracing it and willing to face it, I'm cleansing. I read something beautiful from the Zohar yesterday about the Creator tells us every day there's great new light, new inspiration, new strength you're supposed to access. But in order to access it, that light is surrounded with something that appear like dark, appear like scorpions, poisonous snakes, thorn, to protect that light. If you're willing to go through, because those scorpions or those snakes or those thorns might be my fears, might be my limitations, might be my judgment, might be my doubts, whatever. The only one that will enter to that pure light good that's waiting for you today is the one willing to face and to cross these fences. If you're willing to cross, all these enemies will become your helpers. It means what? It means we all gonna have negative illusionary forces that gonna try to persuade us to move forward, and we all gonna find the light elsewhere. I want to face negativity, and that's how I cleanse it. Or do you want to run away from reality?
I'm smiling because I'm thinking that this is a lesson that we have heard for decades, right? This is an ancient. I'm saying you and I for decades. This wisdom has existed for millennia, and now more than ever, our ability, I don't mean you and me, but in general, humanity, our ability to tolerate discomfort is probably worse than any other time in history. And you can say for better or worse, right? Things are very instant these days, instant downloads. You know, you get annoyed when the phone, the call that you're making doesn't go through automatically. We want everything delivered in 2 hours. You know, the instant nature of modern times makes it even more challenging to maintain this consciousness and this openness for opportunities to practice what we're talking about. Because even when we have a headache or a toothache or a stomach ache, our natural response is, how quickly can I get rid of it? What's the fastest way to alleviate my pain right now? And our soul is there somewhere in the story telling us, you can handle it. We're not talking about being sadistic. Obviously, if you're suffering, there is a reason that these tools exist. But the perception that we can't handle it is the problem. The perception that we can't tolerate the discomfort, that we can't embrace the confusion or the rejection or the criticism. We can. And I once sat in a seminar where someone was talking about specifically this, right? When you are facing something extremely difficult and you're bracing yourself, you're afraid, you're worried, your mind is racing, you ask yourself this question: what's the worst thing that could happen? And most of the time, the worst thing that can happen is already happening. You're miserable. You're just afraid that the misery will never end. So asking yourself, what's the worst thing that can happen? Let's say the worst thing that can happen is, I'm trying to think of a kind of generic situation. This job won't exist for a person, right? They'll be made redundant. They'll be let go. What's the worst thing about that? Not having an income. What's the worst thing about that? Not being able to do, and you take yourself through this kind of logical unraveling of what are you so worried about? What is the impossible discomfort that you are not capable of handling? You realize you can handle it. You can find the solution. You do know how to navigate it. So I believe part of the reason that those moments happen to us where we're facing the criticism, the rejection, the headache, the things that really their duration depend on how we embrace the opportunity to cleanse versus their actual potential to harm us. And I think that what the Kabbalists teach about embracing the discomfort, embracing the unknown, embracing the confusion or the lack of clarity, that's actually what speeds up the process. Even though it's counterintuitive for us because we think, I can do something to stop this. I can criticize back. I won't pick up the phone. We find ways to avoid the discomfort. But the truth is, when we push those potentially painful moments off, they end up coming back at us. And because we didn't let them in the first time, the second time, the third time, they have to come with greater force. They have to come with greater intensity. Sometimes they also have to come with greater duration because we had infinite opportunities before to allow that cleansing to happen, to allow the sting, to allow the discomfort, and we avoided it. So that just compounds over and over and over again until we actually embrace it. It ends up being a lot longer and a lot more challenging than had we allowed the opportunity in the first place. And so part of my intention in bringing this topic to conversation is, if you now can allow yourself to embrace the discomfort, the unknown, the potential for whatever you're worried about being difficult, it'll be a lot easier if you let it in now and embrace it now. 9 times out of 10, the wall that you're afraid of walking through, once you get to the other side, you realize it was just smoke and mirrors, right? The illusion of death is exactly that. It's an illusion. But our perception of how thick and tall the wall is what keeps us trapped and then stuck in that place of carrying the negativity around when we've had so many times we could have cleansed it.
Beautiful. And I think there's another category of cleansing, which is proactive actions, not necessarily waiting for discomfort. For example, a person had a water cleanse. They decided for a week they're just going to drink water. Or they're going to stay away from gluten. They're going to cleanse their body. They're going to stay away from fat. They're going to stay away from carbs. They're going to stay away from sugar. Wow, I'm doing cleansing for my body. So what is the thing that we need to actually cleanse that in the past we indulged in? And you should choose. So for example, a person knows that engage in sex with the pure intention of desire to receive oneself alone, that is not involved with love at all, how do you think does it serve your soul, nurture your soul, elevate your energy? Any energy has 2 directions. It either charging my life force, the soul force, or is charging the death force, the blockage force. Choose for yourself. If you think you need to cleanse that, what is the commitment you're willing to make to stay away? That's part of the cleansing. for sex, which is tremendous energy, interactions of energy, divine energy, but willing to restrict when it's just purely for oneself alone, for my own pleasure. Or speaking bad about other people. You think you need to cleanse it? No, it's gone already. Big mistake. Every time you speak bad about other people, you're actually feeding the force of death that without even you knowing, it's creating confusion, negativities, fears, insecurities. It's layers of that, of doubt that's surrounding us. Are you willing to commit for 30 days not to gossip about anybody? Cleanse yourself from that. We're so good of the new physical cleansing. What about the spiritual cleansing? What are you proactively willing to cleanse yourself from? Because when you're doing that, you're not just restricting and cleansing the present, you're also clearing past negative action.
It's such a powerful message for us to allow in, because I think, like you said, more than ever, probably we're focused on being mindful about how we eat, taking care of our bodies, eating clean, being a conscious consumer and choosing what we surround ourselves with a higher mind. We must give at least, if not more, awareness to how we are spiritually toxifying ourselves, and make that conscious effort to be spiritually clean as well, to purify ourselves. As you said, Eitan, I couldn't have said it better, and really commit in the same way that we commit to taking care of our bodies, to commit to taking care of our souls. Weekly Energy Boost is available on all podcast platforms, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. You can follow us on all those platforms to receive more content throughout the week on what we share in every episode. You can also visit our website, weeklyenergyboost.com, to find out more about the things we think are important for our listeners to know about, as well as to look through our archives, send us a message, and click the donate button to make this podcast possible. But as always, share this episode. The more of us that are working on spiritually cleansing ourselves, the more pure and spiritually cleansed the world is going to be. And we'll see you next week on the Weekly Energy Boost.